So after months of God working on my heart, on Easter Sunday, April 15th, 1990, I finally decided to give my life to Christ. And it was soon after that I really felt like God was calling me into the ministry. And so that summer I went home as a sophomore in college, and I started going to the church that my parents went to. And they said, hey, we need somebody to teach our 5th and 6th grade class. We know you've been called to the ministry. We think you should do it. Never taught a class before in my life, but I said yes. So I watched all the preacher boys at the college that I went to, and they seemed to walk around campus pretty confident. They'd wear their suits, and they had a briefcase. So I asked my dad if I could borrow his briefcase, and he said, sure. Didn't know what to put in that briefcase, but I had some ideas, so I put in some gold stars and candy bars. Figured I'd give these kids a challenge for the summer. They brought their Bibles, if they memorized their verses, if they brought their friends, if they showed up, they would get gold stars and candy bars. At the end of the summer, I'd reward them with a really big prize for the one who got the most gold stars. And so for the guy, I bought him a box of baseball cards, 1990. You could afford it back then. I didn't know what to get the girl, so I just gave her $20. So I was going to that church for a while, and got to tell you this part of the story. Later on, a few years later, the pastor's son became pastor of that church. And then after years of reported abuse, they found his wife hanging in a bedroom closet. Several years later, the pastor of that church, young guy, was arrested for conspiracy on trying to murder his girlfriend and her family by throwing a Molotov cocktail through a window. I've seen some stuff. Been through some stuff. I grew up in a church that we would call very legalistic. Do you know what that means? It's like you follow the rules or else. Today's message is going to be kind of difficult. It might be difficult to hear. It's definitely been difficult for me to prepare, and it's going to be difficult to preach. But I wanted to start this way, because when we talk about the things we talk about today, I can tell you with absolute certainty that I've experienced personally every single one of these situations. We're going to talk and start with anger. And anger that's left unchecked can turn to murder. Then we're going to look at lust. Lust that's unrestrained turns to adultery. And then finally, we're going to look at divorce. And from my experience, and from what I observe, selfishness is the root of divorce. Selfishness left uncontrolled can lead to divorce. Like I said, I've experienced personally all of these and lived with all of these. I believe in a God that is gracious and merciful. And I was waiting to say this at the end, but I'll tell you now, you can't unring a bell. I understand that. That's not the focus today. I look around, I see so many young people in here this morning, and it is so awesome to have you. I see some old people in here as well. And none of us are immune from the temptations, the lure of Satan. So like I said, I'm here to tell you, I've personally experienced all of these myself. And God is good, and God is gracious, and he's forgiving, and he works wonder-working miracles. And I want to tell you that I would not be here this morning, be able to preach a message like this or be able to talk to individuals like you if God had not allowed me to go through some of the experiences that I've gone through in my own personal life. I had a great blessing this morning. I got to see my grandson show up at church today. I have 3 incredible kids. Incredible kids. I grew up under the understanding of spare the rod and do what? Spoil the child, right? In my devotional reading this past week, I was reminded in Proverbs where it says that folly resides in the heart of a child, but the rod of discipline drives it far from them. There's a place for discipline. There's a place for mercy and grace. And I'm just somebody who's been blessed by God in tremendous ways with an incredible family, opportunity to serve him like I do, and I thank God every day for my blessings. So I know the heartache, I know the hurt, I know the pain that some of you might have gone through, and you still carry even to today. I just wrote this when I was standing back there and I thought about it. And we're going to talk about anger in just a moment. But who were the ones that murdered Jesus? It was the religious elite. The ones who knew what they were supposed to do and didn't do it. So we're all susceptible. And even in my history, in my past, we grew up with Bible sword drills. Anybody else? Sword drills, you know what I'm talking about, right? Reading Sword of the Lord. Anybody know what that publication is? That's my history. See, you can know it. Doesn't mean you're going to live it. And I knew a whole bunch of people who knew it, and they're not living it. Who had religion forced down their throats and into their lives. And they're no longer walking with the Lord. So we're going to see today that yes, it's important. It's good to know the scriptures, and the scriptures, the Bible, provide a rule for our life, a way we can direct our lives. But again, it's not just about knowing it, it's about doing something with it. So good morning. Good morning. Isaiah, it's fantastic seeing you up there playing the drums this morning. You did great, kid. Awesome. All right, so we got a lot of great things happening around here at the church. My name is Scott. If you're one of our guests, I'm so glad you're here with us today. And if you do me a favor, in the pew back in front of you, there is a little connect card. If you don't mind just filling that out, it's a little start here card. Just give it to me after the service or one of our ushers, and I promise all I will do is send you a letter in the mail saying thank you for joining us in church today. But we're so excited that you're with us, especially if you're also joining us and watching online. And I'm going to go see my mom this evening. I'm going to be in Lynchburg for the next few days at a conference. Can't wait to get down there and be a part of that and be able to see her. And so she hates it when I tell these types of stories, but I try to encourage her all the time. Everything I just said, God is good, God is gracious, God is merciful, and I would not be the man, the husband, the father, the pastor that I am today if I had not gone through those things. And my mom is a person who loves God with all of her heart, more than probably anybody else that I know. So let me give you a very quick recap. If you notice, we only sang 2 songs to start with. That's because I'm trying to keep my message to 40 minutes. Let's go, all right? So yeah, get an applause out of that. $20, right? It goes a long way. Okay, so we'll see. But anyways, we have a special song at the conclusion of the message, and we have a family thing going on over there, so I need to try to get this done quickly. So just to give you a very quick recap. So we are in the book of Matthew, chapter 5. We're going through the Sermon on the Mount. Let me give you, again, just a quick overview. So in verses 1 and 2, we saw that Jesus went up on a mountainside and he began to teach them. He called his disciples to him. And so who is he teaching there? Who are the they? So initially it's the disciples, but then it's the crowd of people that are around him. We start there. That's important because we have to understand that God does the drawing to himself. I can tell people about Jesus, but unless the Holy Spirit draws them, my work is in vain. It's the Holy Spirit that's a part of all of that. And then again, so you see who the they are, though they, them, they are in chapter 4. All right, so go back and look at chapter 4. Jesus, right at the very end of chapter 4, he heals the hurting, the demon-possessed, and the sick, and they begin to follow after him. Verses 3 through 12, we talked about the Beatitudes, it's the qualities and the characteristics that you will possess when you follow Jesus Christ. And we're living in this upside-down kingdom. They don't make sense to this world, but when you live it and you understand it, you see that you're living for a greater purpose because you're a part of the citizen or the kingdom of heaven. And then verses 13 to 16, we talked about the idea how you are the salt of the earth and the light of the world, and we have an influence that we can have upon the world when we are bearers of the gospel. We're called to change the world through Jesus Christ. And then last week we talked about this idea of verses 17 to 20, that God or Jesus honors and fulfills the law. He calls his followers beyond a superficial skin-deep religion into a deeper life of faith. And then he showed that the Pharisees, again, they followed this shallow religion. They looked good on the outside. They wore masks that were beautiful, but on the inside they were dirty and they were rotten. And so Jesus says we need to start with the inside, and then from the inside God cleans us to the outside. And also we looked at this idea that, again, Jesus honored the law, and he takes us deeper into a real relationship with God. So, if you study this, which I hope maybe you do a little bit, you'll see an amazing progression of how Jesus teaches. He keeps taking them deeper and deeper and deeper into their faith. And so today we're going to look at this idea that Jesus exposes their hypocrisy and reveals that a truly changed life is one that is done through Jesus Christ, a relationship with him, and he raises the bar of faith. And so I like to give you notes, and so in your bulletin this morning, you should have a note sheet. And so the first fill-in is this. It's the idea that amplified faith is the outward expression of inward transformation. It's an outward expression of inward transformation, like that little church that I went to. Suit, tie, everybody looked good, right, on the outside. However, it wasn't necessarily that way on the inside. Jesus says, it doesn't matter what you look like when you show up and start following me. I'll do the work. I'll change you from the inside out. And so last week, we went deeper. This week, we're going to go, can you take me higher? Higher. Okay, thank you. All right. So I was reminded of a story by my buddy Jim Thurman this week. And I looked it up, and I got the original story, but then I'm going to tell you a story at the end of it. So there's this theologian, German theologian. His name is Helmut Tichel, all right? And so early on, when he was a child, he walked by this little storefront, and he saw this sign for hot rolls inside. So he got really excited. He ran home, and he gathered as much change as he possibly could and put them in his pocket, ran back to the store, excited that he was going to get some fresh, hot rolls. However, to his dismay, when he came into the shop, he realized that it was not a shop selling hot rolls. It was simply a shop that painted signs. We have all these expectations for people when they show up. We advertise all these really cool things that we say we're a part of. But does our inside match our outside? Does the inside of this place match the outside of the image that we're trying to project? Are we people here who say that we believe in the goodness of God, in the faithfulness of God, and that we live our life with a sense of trust, and we understand that God changes us from the inside out? We say all are welcome, but are all truly welcome here? I like to say everyone is. And we're moving in that direction. And so again, how does your faith really impact your lives? So we got a lot of passages to cover this morning. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it, I'm going to explain it, and then I'm going to show you how you might be able to take action and you can apply it again to your life. So we're starting in the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 21. And this is Jesus, and he's continuing to speak, and he's taking them through this progression. And he says this, you have heard that it has been said to the people long ago. So he's talking about the law. He's talking about some oral tradition. He's also talking about the teaching that people would give. And he's going back to the commandments. Teenagers. He's going to reference command 6 and command 7. Are you tired of it yet? Very. Thank you. Older people, if you don't know what I'm talking about, just talk to a younger person. They'll inform you. All right. It means absolutely nothing. Nothing. All right. So here we go. So again, it was said to the people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to the judgment. But I tell you, I absolutely love this with Jesus. You've heard it said before, but I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, Raka, is answerable to the court. Anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fires of hell. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and reconcile to them, then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judgment, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown in prison. Truly I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. The last penny. So let me explain a few things to you this morning. So as we look at each one of these topics that Jesus talks about, there is a consistent idea throughout of do this with a sense of urgency. Do it now. Don't let it sit. Don't let it fester. Don't let it become a burden. Because the heart of the matter is a matter of the heart. These are all heart issues. He goes directly to the heart. So here's another fill-in for you. Faith is amplified by urgently pursuing reconciliation. Do it now. Don't wait. Take action now. This is what Jesus is saying. So just so you know, in context, in this teaching, Jesus presents these two scenarios in two different contexts. So when he talks about anger and offending somebody else, he's relating to the Jewish law. This is the Jewish law that he's talking about, but we don't know exactly. There possibly could be some Gentiles there, and the Jews, when they lived in this Gentile Roman community, they might be subject to Roman laws as well. So it's a Jewish law, and it's actually also a Roman law to be taken to Gentile or Roman judges. And so when he starts with this, you need to understand when he's referring back to them and saying, you have heard it said, thou shalt not murder. So it's kind of like this. You see, the Pharisees, they would set a low bar when it came to some of these commandments. So when he's talking about this again, this is what he's talking about. So Pharisees, they would measure their righteousness by the absence of the act. So it would be like this. You come home from work and your spouse says, so how was your day? And your response would simply be, I didn't murder anybody. Right? That's what they're saying. I didn't kill anybody today, so today it must have been a good day. That's their level, their low bar of righteousness. And Jesus says, all right, that's your bar. That's how you interpret it, but this is what I'm going to tell you. If you are angry with somebody, have contempt for somebody, then you are just as guilty as that of somebody who murders someone. So you see, in anger and insult and contempt, there are seeds of murder that are working there. And he's warning that sinful anger and unresolved conflict will cause us to be under the judgment. Again, it's an issue of the heart. Anger poisons the heart. Anger poisons the heart. Again, this is sinful anger. Because you might be sitting there, you might be thinking, oh, well, didn't Jesus get angry? And he did. You remember a couple of times. One time he goes into the temple and they're selling things and he gets absolutely upset. He takes a cord, he fashions it into a whip, and he drives all these money changers out of the church, out of the temple. And he says, this is to be a house of prayer, right? This is my Father's house. Another time he gets upset with the Pharisees and the Sadducees because he healed somebody on the Sabbath day. So there is an anger that is righteous anger. We have to be careful not to justify our anger to make it righteous. But it's a root, a deep bitterness. And so, again, with all of these, you're going to see that there is a lingering that takes place. It's kind of like this. So have you ever been to the grocery store and there were no carts available? So you had to grab a basket. No, that doesn't happen to you? It happens to me. Let's just say it happened to you, all right? And you've got a lot of stuff on your list. And so you decide to use that cart or that basket. And so you're putting your stuff in and it's heavier and heavier and heavier, right? But you continue to carry that burden around. And so you want to throw it up on your shoulder, right? And the thing is, it'd be very simple. You notice that there are carts that are available, but you're like, it's all right. I got it. It's good. Well, this is anger. It's you carrying around that weight of bitterness, and it gets heavier and heavier and more cumbersome, but you're unwilling to let it go. But then I thought about this as I was thinking about this analogy. Sometimes we like to keep the anger with us. Sometimes we like to hold on to that anger with us because let's just imagine these were rocks, okay? And we decided, I'm going to use that anger. I'm going to hurt somebody with that anger. I'm not ready to let that anger go. See, you're carrying around that bitterness, and it leads to an attitude of willing to almost murder someone. Jesus says, with urgency, put it down. Let it go. Don't carry it around. Again, it gets to this point. You need to understand the context of this. So I don't have a map up here, but let me describe this to you. So Jesus is preaching. He's teaching in a place called Galilee. Galilee is about 50 miles from Jerusalem, and he hits them right where they are. He says this. He goes, if you find yourself in Jerusalem at the temple giving an offering, and you remember that you have some problem with somebody else, you need to leave your gift there, your offering there. So what's the big deal? It's 50 miles. How often do you think these people actually got to go to the temple and give an offering? Not all the time. Maybe once or twice a year. He's saying, this is how important it is for you to deal with the situation in your life right now. You need to leave it there. This is more important than you actually going to the temple and leaving an offering. If you find yourself there, leave that offering there. Go back and reconcile it first. Take care of that matter first with urgency. Because unresolved anger, lingering anger can turn to murder for anyone. And if you've done it in your heart, you might as well have committed the act. Matter of fact, Paul writes this. He says in Ephesians, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on you while you're still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. A foothold. And when we do, when we resolve this anger, we're actually living our lives as modeled by our Creator. In the book of Psalms 145, the writer says this, the Lord is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, and rich in love. And so that's the same attitude that we need to have. We need to be slow in our getting of angry and quick to forgive. Because again, Jesus elevates the level of expectations. Again, we're going back to this idea of we're living this life on a narrow path, and we're called to walk this way in it with Christ. And even Paul provided more instruction in the book of Romans chapter 12. This is difficult for all of us, but this is what Paul says. Remember, in that time, Jews were hated by the Gentiles. They did not get along, but he says this, if at all possible, he's writing to the new Christians in Rome. He's saying, if at all possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. That's what we're called to do, to live at peace with everyone. Now, I understand the difficulty of this because, like you, I drive the roads of King George. Right? I mean, not only is it the drivers, but it's the deer that seem to cause problems in our lives, right? And how easy is it to get angry at other people? And I would dare to think that nobody would argue with me that we are currently living in an age within our culture that doesn't seem to want to live in peace and harmony with others. Everybody is quick to fire back, to tell them that they're number one. You got it? Okay. And Jesus is specific. He uses this word raka. Raka. It's a degrading word. And sometimes it carries into our thoughts and our language, like we might think Democrat, raka. Republican, raka. Illegal immigrant, raka. Gay, raka. Atheist, raka. Mormon, raka. Catholic, raka. Cowboys fan, raka. How quick are we, though, to degrade someone, to call them literally an idiot, a jerk, or a fool? That's what Jesus is saying. I don't know anything else about you other than you are that. And because you are that, raka. You're an idiot. You're a fool. Again, it's dehumanizing, condemning language. It's this idea that you don't have to spill blood to kill life. It's an attitude of the heart. And the truth is, when Jesus tells them to leave their offering, he's saying, when you come to my house to worship, make sure your heart is right. Because you cannot worship God with integrity without having a clear conscience and right relationships with your brothers and sisters. You might want to put it down this way. See, worship is hollow if the heart is heavy with conflict. What did you bring in this place this morning? What bitterness did you walk in with? What do you need to lay down so that you can worship God with a pure heart? Again, Jesus says handle this with urgency before it escalates. It'd be like if you saw, actually this morning, we were standing down here at the front, and Jim, I don't know what it was, but a few people said, it smells like something's burning. If you saw a small spark that was a small fire, if you let that go uncontained, what would happen? It would turn into a wildfire. And it's the same thing with anger. If you let it go unchecked, it can cause serious damage. It can destroy relationships and communities. So Jesus continues on in verse 27. He says this, you have heard it said, you shall not commit adultery. But I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. Do you see this common theme here? Don't get your body thrown into hell, right? And if your right hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away, for it is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. So we're talking about adultery here. This is the seventh commandment that Jesus is referring to. And the thought of today, in our culture today, and also in a lot of churches today, is this. Shouldn't we stay away from what people do in privacy? It's what they do. It's none of my business. Don't you know that the Bible is culturally conditioned? It's not applicable for today and to our society. We've advanced beyond that with our social norms and what's acceptable. I mean, that's archaic thinking 2,000 years ago. But here's the reality. You need to understand that sexuality is connected with spirituality. Sexuality is connected with spirituality. God gave us sex, not the devil. God gave us sex, not the devil. This was God's idea. He says, if you do it right, it's awesome. If you do it right, in the right context, it's incredible. It's how I designed it to be. Again, Jesus amplifies faith, not just as an external act. Because with the Pharisees, they, again, remember, they limited their responsibility to physical acts. But Jesus goes to the root of the issue, which is our desires. So you might want to write this down. You see, living in his kingdom means that our desires, thoughts, and intentions must be shaped by his love. Shaped by his love. See, here's the comparison when it comes to lust and love. Lust is about consumption. Love is about communion. Lust is about taking. Love is about giving. Lust uses and love honors. Lust diminishes and love cherishes. And we do live in a culture and a society today where there's temptation all around us. Oftentimes it is unwanted. Did you know that porn is interacted with more than Netflix, Amazon, or Twitter combined? Did you know that 35% of all internet downloads, 35% of all internet downloads relates to pornography? 34% of internet users. Isn't it interesting how we're users when we use the internet, just like drugs are comparable to users of drugs? It's interesting to me. 34% of all internet users have been exposed to unwanted pop-up ads related to porn. 30%, listen, 30% of all data transferred across the internet is related to pornography. It is at the fingertips of everyone. And don't have the statistics here, but it used to be thought of that pornography was primarily consumed by men. However, in our culture today, it's just about equally as it goes with women as well. None of us are immune to it. I just recently heard this, that the top uses of AI, artificial intelligence, is for companionship on a personal level, for companionship and for therapy. We don't know how to live in a real world anymore. Again, in context, and with the next one, Jesus is protecting and honoring women specifically. And you need to understand that this is a lingering, it's not just a glance. This is written in a present participle tense. It's to ongoing be looking at something, to fantasize at something. It's not just a glance, but it's fantasizing, it's dwelling on it. It's a lingering thing, just like it is with anger. See, you can lust in your heart without your eyes, but the eyes make it easier. And so Jesus calls us to action with a sense of urgency. And so faith is amplified by radically guarding purity. Our faith is amplified by radically guarding purity. So the question is Jesus really advising us to gouge out our eyes or cut off our hands if we find ourselves in these situations? Jesus is using what's called hyperbole. Have you heard that before? Hyperbole. So it's exaggeration to emphasize a point. However, I have to ask, are the consequences of the action worth it? When you understand what you're in danger of? See, when it comes to the hand and the eye, it's a package deal. That's why Jesus puts them together. See, the eyes entice the heart, but the heart, enticed by the eyes, directs the hands. And so we're to radically guard purity. And again, I want to remind you that Jesus calls us to this when we went through the Beatitudes, that we're to have a pure or a clean heart. And we're to protect it at all costs later. Paul writes this in 1 Thessalonians. He says, it is God's will that you should be sanctified. That means to be set apart. That you should avoid sexual immorality. That each of you should learn to control your own body in a way that is honorable and holy. And when he says should, it's not a should, like you should do this, like it'd be a good idea. It's a must. It's a command. And then Paul, writing to this young pastor, Timothy, he said that we're to flee all evil desires of our youth or our lusts and pursue righteousness, faith, love, and peace along with those who call on the Lord out of a pure heart. So yes, we're to take radical measures to guard our heart. My reading yesterday in Proverbs 4, Solomon writes, he says, we're to guard our hearts above all else, for it determines the course of your life. We protect our hearts. Again, it's radical. What measures should you take? Let me ask you this question. Any of you in here who would ever maybe for some reason contract a flesh-eating disease or a virus on your hand, would you be willing to cut off your arm to save your life? No, I think I'll just live with it. I can manage it for a while. It's just a flesh wound. No. He's saying we need to take action now. This idea of be killing sin, or sin will be killing you. Be killing sin, or sin will be killing you. We're to guard our eyes and our ears and our heart and our mind, even if it's extreme. I got a couple books I'd recommend that you read. There's a guy by the name of Brad Huddleston. I was at a conference with him a couple summers ago, and he's become an expert in this era. I don't know if you've been paying attention to any of the news that's going on in the world, but in Australia, they've actually banned social media for kids 16 and under. Have you heard about that? Probably not. Okay. There's been this big thing going on within our country when it comes to TikTok and what we should allow teenagers to be able to be exposed to, right? Right? What are you willing to do to safeguard your heart? That's all I'm asking. What measures are you willing to take? Are you willing to get rid of some apps on your phone or put some different blockers on your computer or have some type of accountability issue set up so that other people can see your browsing history? Would you be willing to do that? If it meant that you might be saving yourself from some pain or others from some pain? This is the level that Jesus is calling us to. This is what he's doing. He's saying, look, there's a danger out there, the danger of hell. It's a place in Israel. It's a place actually in Jerusalem called Gehenna. This is what he's talking about. And you might have read about that before. Do you know the history of this? Do you know what Gehenna is? Gehenna is a valley. It's a valley. It's actually where there would be pagan sacrifices offered. There would be children that would be killed and thrown into this valley. Later on in the city of Jerusalem, the Israelites would use this valley as a garbage dump. It is where they would throw out their trash and they would light it on fire. And it talks about the worm does not die in this valley. It's a continuous fire, continually going. This is Gehenna. Now the thing is, you can actually go there today. You can see this valley. I was there. I've seen it. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to go to Israel. I went to Jerusalem, and we were coming down the Mount of Olives. We were going up to the other side of the hill, and I looked down, and I saw a road sign, a green and white road sign, just like we have, and it says Gehenna. I was like, actually, that is a place. It's a trash heap. This is where your life will end up if you continue to go down this road, if you don't do something about it now. It's going to be a wreck. Your future life, your eternal life, but even your life right now, how many of you have experienced hell because of some of the decisions of other people, especially when it comes to this? Jesus is saying, take action now. Parents, guard your children's hearts now because it will determine the course of their life. How many adults in here, when you were 11, 12, 13, 15, 16, whatever, you found those magazines or you found that channel or you found those DVDs and now you have images that are seared, literally, physiologically seared into your brain of things that you saw and you witnessed years ago? That's what our kids are susceptible to today. What are you willing to do to keep them from that? Now, guard your heart with everything that you can, for it determines the course of your life. Again, you can't unring a bell, but you got to put a stop to some things. You can ask God to forgive you and give you strength. Jesus continues on in verse 31. He says this, "It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce." Now notice here, anyone that divorces his wife. This is important. It doesn't say divorces her husband. Notice that. Verse 32, "But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife except for sexual immorality makes her the victim of adultery, and anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Like I said, I am not here to unring a bell." Not here to do that. My mom has been married 3 times. My real father has been married 3, 4, 5 times. I'm not exactly sure. Can't unring a bell. Can't change the past. You can start where you are. You can change the future. So again, in context, some rabbis allowed divorce for any reason. Any reason. And the Pharisees twisted Moses' teaching into a loophole. So just for some context, this is fun for me. I love this stuff. So back in the day, there were these 2 schools. One was the school of Shammai, and the other one was the school of Hillel. There were these 2 different rabbis who were known for their interpretations of the scriptures. So Shammai, he was viewed as a very strict rabbi. If the word says it, this is what you must do and what you must follow. Well, Hillel, he was more on the liberal side. We'll just call him the liberal side. And so he actually came up with a list of reasons why husbands can divorce their wives. Do you want to know what they were? It's kind of fun. Just listen. So, if a woman or a wife were barren or became deaf or mute or had epilepsy or tinnitus, warts or leprosy, he could divorce her. If your ears are ringing, you're in trouble, right? If the husband considered that the wife failed to keep up her chores, or if he deemed her lazy, out she goes. If she had physical defects, especially around the head area, all right? If her head was wedged or hammer-shaped, or sunken in, or flat at the back, he could divorce her. If she had poor posture or thinning hair, she was out. If she had no eyebrows, one eyebrow, or bushy eyebrows, out. If she had a pug nose, out. If her eyes were too low, cross-eyed, if she had no eyelashes, two different colored eyes, watery eyes, or eyes like a calf or a small goose, she's done. If her ears were too little or too floppy, if she had an overbite, an underbite, if she was missing teeth, if she had a poor figure, a swollen belly, or even an outie. You know what an outie is? She's out. If she had dark complexion, bony ankles or knees, swollen feet, if she was bow-legged, had a swollen big toe, that was a problem. If the sole of her foot was as wide as that of a goose, if she was ambidextrous, if she ate something her husband said she couldn't eat, he could divorce her. If she visited her parents, he could divorce her. Or if her in-laws moved to the same city without his permission, he could divorce her. If she broke the laws of Moses or Jewish customs by going outside with her hair unbound, he could divorce her. If she spun cloth in the street or spoke to any man other than her husband, he could divorce her. If she cursed her husband's parents or yelled at the husband loud enough to be heard outside, he could divorce her. If she had a bad reputation, if she burned his supper, or if he simply found someone else that he thought was prettier than her, he could divorce her. So I wonder if these Jewish men had Solomon's wife in mind when they were thinking about a woman who looked better than their wife. I think I have a picture of an illustration of what that woman might look like. Because if you read Solomon, Solomon says this is what beauty is. Your eyes are like doves. Your hair is like a flock of goats. Your teeth are like a flock of ewes. Your lips are like scarlet thread. Your temples are a slice of pomegranate. Your neck is like the Tower of David, and your breasts are like two fawn gazelles. That's the ideal woman right there. According to Solomon, the wisest man ever. But again, Jesus is giving instructions for these husbands to honor and to protect their wives, because only men at that time, only husbands could ask for a divorce. A woman could not. And this would be devastating for a woman. She would have no rights. She couldn't work. She'd be relegated to begging on the street. Now, I know you're sitting there and you're thinking, but marriage is tough. Absolutely. We're supposed to live up to this? Absolutely. We are. I often remind you to not dismiss the ideal as impossible. This is what God wants us to live up to when it comes to our marriages. This is the ideal, and you don't have to sit back and go, well, I should just not even try because it's impossible. Because marriage is by God's design and is a part of his covenant. And so faith is amplified by faithfully honoring your covenant. Faith is amplified. It's lived out by faithfully honoring your covenant. And so Jesus, again, he restores God's design for marriage. And in Matthew 19, he quotes from the original plan of God given in the book of Genesis. He'll say this is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united with his wife, and they become one flesh. One flesh. Robert Spaman, who's a theologian, he said this: the essence of marriage is that two lives, two whole biographies are so tied together that they become one history. One history. There's this idea in the Hebrew and in the Greek of what's called a soul tie. That when you're intimate with someone, your souls become intertwined with one another. And just so you know, marriage is the epitome of all human intimacy, not sex. Not sex. God gave us sex within marriage for companionship, for procreation, and actually also for redemption. So for companionship, God said, I want you to be tied together. I'm going to give you a helpmate so that you can together share the work, share life with one another. It's for procreation. I like to say it's recreation or recreation. You notice how the two words are the same? Did you catch that? Recreation, recreation. And it's an expression of intimacy. And then finally, it's actually also theological. It's for redemption. As followers of Jesus Christ, two people are united into one, and then they have kids, they have offspring, and the idea is that you're going to raise those kids to also follow Christ. It's a great plan for church growth. So I'm excited that our nursery and preschool ministry has grown by 400%. Our young families are just following the Bible. It's awesome. It's awesome. And so Paul writes about this as well in Ephesians. He says, husbands, you're to love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and will be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. And it's a model of the church. Paul continues, he closes out, and he says, this is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ and the church. It's a model. Marriage is a model of God through Christ and his relationship with us. Like I said, is it difficult? Absolutely. But the key to this is respect and love and submission to one another. It's not easy. John Getty, one of the richest, wealthiest men ever, after his third marriage, said this, I would gladly give all my millions for just one long, lasting marital success. Couples, it's worth all the money in the world. Again, marriage mirrors Christ's covenant with this church. It's not a contract that can be easily broken. So if you're married, you need to cherish and protect your covenant. And you again want to write that down. Marriage mirrors Christ's covenant with this church, and it's not a contract to be easily broken. So marrieds, invest in communication, in forgiveness, in patience, and in prayer. If you're single, honor marriages by preparing for your future marriage covenant as well, and learn from others. And don't view dating as disposable, because you'll carry that into your marriage as well. I've done several weddings, many weddings, had many premarital counseling sessions with engaged couples, and there's not one single couple that has come to me and said, we're going to give this a shot for 6 months to a year, and if it doesn't work out, oh well. You ever met anybody like that? No, they go into it going, we're going to do this, and we're going to make this work for a lifetime. So if you're not married, this is what you need to be preparing yourself for. And then for all of us, the point is Christ. He's the bridegroom who never forsakes his people. Now, here's the deal. Like I've said throughout the message, you cannot unring a bell, and especially when it comes to this, I'm not saying that you stay in a relationship where you're being abused. I think it's because of the idea of selfishness, right? That's not what the Bible is saying. But in all of our relationships, we need to seek Christ. See, true faith in Christ isn't skin deep, but it penetrates to the heart and is amplified by our actions. And so we have to be careful. Anger must give way to reconciliation. Lust must give way to purity. Marriage must reflect on the covenant of faithfulness with one another. And so let me tell you this story as I wrap up. So I remember I mentioned this guy named Helmut when he was young. Well, when he was old, after he studied the Bible, Billy Graham came and did a big crusade in their city. And he had been working as a pastor for a while, and he had these young guys, and one guy went to the Billy Graham crusade, and he accepted Christ. And so he immediately went to Helmut, and he said, okay, now what do I do? Now what do I do after I've accepted Christ? And Helmut gave him this very simple advice. He said, go home, be kind to your wife, and don't forget the hot rolls. Don't forget the hot rolls. Church, this is what God is telling us. Don't forget the hot rolls. make sure what you're selling is what you're advertising. For all of us. I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. What does that mean? I'm a husband. What does that mean? I'm a father. What does that mean? Am I actually selling what I'm advertising as a follower of Christ? So the question is, are you simply trying to keep the rules, or are you actually living out the commands of Christ? And so here's our one last thing. You see, amplified faith is more about thou shalt be than thou shalt not. This is what God is calling us to. How are you living your life according to the teachings of Jesus? He wants to take your faith higher. He wants you to amplify your faith so that others will be drawn to Christ through you. So we're doing something a little bit different this morning. We're going to have a special song, a time of what I want you to use as reflection, of just allowing the Spirit to speak to you, to think about the things that we talked about this morning. I want you to hear the words to the song as Karen and Nikki come and they present this special music time for us.